Hello, everybody. Welcome to our super casual review of 3 bosses of the new raid. Hope everyone is doing okay. We're gonna start kicking it off with one of our favorite guide writers, StankieGaming. He's in Visage. Give him a hard time if you see him around, but we'll go ahead and start off watching his video guide of the first boss in the raid, Ulgrax.
What's up everybody, another beautiful day in Azeroth, and here's how to defeat heroic Ulgrax in the Nerub'ar Palace. On pull, tank, drag boss back a bit and make sure to aim its brutal crush frontal cone away from the raid. Make sure to pop a defensive before you get hit, as you become healing immune for a while following it. When boss casts Stalker's webbing, tons of swirl spawns that turn into web on the ground. Swirls are bad, and the web will root you in place if you move into it. Players targeted by digestive acid gets a green circle around them, takes a ton of ticking damage and explodes after 6 seconds. This explosion can be used to clear web on the ground. However, when boss casts Carnivorous Contest, you actually can use these webs to your advantage. This targets a player, and after a few seconds they take lethal damage split between players hit and binds them to Ulgrax. Boss then tries to pull you in, and if successful, you die. So you want to put several players in this to split damage and reduce its pull-in effect. You can just run against a pull-in effect using Windrush, Roar, etc. Or you can actually root yourself with the webs to avoid moving. During testing, this was also immutable. So if, for example, a poor little mage got targeted, they could just blink out an immune. And you're free to just smash boss. Beware of Venomous Lash, raid-wide knockback that deals damage on hit and over time. Avoid getting knocked into a web or off the platform. When boss reaches 0 energy, they jump into the middle, dealing raid-wide damage and knocking everyone back. Again, make sure not to die, and then slips into the Void Realm. For this intermission, tons of ravenous spawns. You want to make sure to stun, vortex grip, etc. to keep them in check. Applies a nasty stacking bleed. During this phase, Ulgrax will charge back and forth across the platform with a stunningly voidy charge. Don't get hit, you will die. During this, you want to nuke down all the ads, and when boss stops charging, you need to feed them to Ulgrax. Players can interact and pick up dead ads. Get close to boss, and using an extra action button, you feed Ulgrax. Now during this, Ulgrax takes 99% less damage and AoEs to raid until well fed, and it deals more damage with every cast, so the faster you are, the better. Following this, rinse repeat until Ulgrax is no more. And that's pretty much it. And that's pretty much it for Ulgrax on Heroic, as well as normal. If you have any questions at all, hit me up in the comments, or become a patron, Twitch, or YouTube member and gain access to the...
Alright, we will stop it there. So this is the first boss, which is generally not that exciting, but I will say the visual effects I thought were quite nice. You saw that purple charge across the raid. I thought it was pretty cool. You have a little intermission with some AoE pad, which DPS always enjoy. So for a first boss, I think it's pretty cool. And then what you're seeing on the page now is actually raid guides that I make for the Questionably Epic website. It's little 1-page PDFs. I have these for each of the first 7 bosses. The last boss, of course, was not tested, so that's not up. Today we'll just go over the first 3 bosses. So Ulgrax, he is a hangry beetle indeed. As you saw in the video, I'll just briefly go through this for those that are more like visual learners. Hey Aideen, beetle boy, yes, hangry beetle boy. I'll just quickly go over these. I like these as a supplement to watching videos because as a raid leader, I need to know like every single mechanic because a raider is inevitably going to die to it and ask me why. So I just like having the dungeon journal essentially summarized over here. So yeah, if you're a tank, be aware of Brutal Crush. That's your big tank mechanic. It's a frontal cone. You don't want to aim it at your raid unless you really don't enjoy them. And you do get some interesting mechanic. It's not just big damage. You also get 20 stacks of a healing reduction. So your healers will be unhappy they cannot parse on you. just aim it away from the raid, as you can see in this diagram. Like Stanky mentioned in his video guide, the digestive acid debuffs that come out, it's the green circle. You can clear the webs. In Heroic, it's okay to not clear them. Like you mentioned, you can kind of cheese if you're a melee and you want to keep hitting the boss. You can cheese the suck-in mechanic by standing on a web and getting rooted. But in Mythic, that is a permanent stun, so don't get bad habits. So potentially don't use the webs. Permastun, bad for DPS. In Mythic, we took the soak out here to group soak. That's what causes the second effect. If you don't have enough people in it, you will get pulled into the boss and you will get one shot. In Mythic, this mechanic becomes, it has a debuff as well, so you can't actually soak it twice in a row. You have to split your raid. Everyone has to help, sorry. So yeah, use Explosion to clear the webs. The swirlies on the ground in Mythic, they were like one-shotting during raid testing, so just be aware that's a thing. I died, I'm not going to lie, I died to that at least once during raid testing. So yeah, that's the main phase. Intermission, it does have a knockback, so make sure you're paying attention to the boss's energy. It will leap to the center of the room and then knock everyone back. And again, you can get knocked off the platform, so be careful. You can get knocked into those webs on the room. And again, in Mythic, that perma-stuns you until you are DPS'd out. So bad for parsing. But yeah, Intermission is super cool. That's where you see that really cool purple charge across the room. You just want to keep dodging it. In beta testing, so you know how at the end of the video, the boss stood still and you had to feed it? In beta testing, where the boss ends during intermission is always across from eggs. There's like eggs that spawn. The ads that you kill, the first clump of eggs that spawn, the boss always ended across from that. So you can kind of plan your movement to try and end up there so that you kill all the ads by the boss and just can instantly pick up their dead bodies and feed the boss. It's just an extra action button. So be aware those ads, if they melee you, if you don't let your tank get aggro, you will get a very nasty bleed. It was doing significant damage on beta testing, so 3 sunders, you know the rule. Watch aggro. I think that's pretty much it. You have to feed the boss a lot, and everyone needs to help. He's pulsing AoE, so healers might not be able to do that many, but should definitely try to get at least one in. Does anyone in chat have questions about this boss? I think I already went over the Mythic mechanics as well. Oh yeah, during intermission the boss is immune, so like obviously why would you be DPSing the boss? Just feed it. How many can you soak? Like how many can you feed? You can feed as many as you want. Yeah, there's no limit. Just pick up all the dead bodies. The dead bodies have like a little glow on them, and if they're clickable, and you just like run over, click it, and then run to the boss. Good question, Aideen. Your raid leader is going to be so proud of you. But yeah, like I said, Mythics, I think this is actually permanent. I think I'm wrong about 30 seconds. Maybe it was 30 seconds and it just felt permanent. Oh, and then yeah, during intermission there's a new Mythic ad called Bile Soaked Spawn. It just pulses damage to melee. So yeah, melee, good luck with that. You just gotta nuke it quickly. So yeah, that is it for the first boss. If there is no other questions, we can move on to the second boss, which is Heroic Bloodbound Horror. And with that, I will go ahead and play Stanky's video.
What's up everybody, another beautiful day in Azeroth, and here's how to defeat Heroic Bloodbound Horror in the Nerub'ar Palace. Starting off, split your raid evenly, Team A and Team Omega Pepega. Now, throughout the fight, boss will cast Gruesome Disgorge on the active tank, which is a huge frontal cone. Players hit by this get sent down to a void realm where you need to kill ads. The same player cannot go down twice in a row. Lost Watchers needs to be tanked, their black bulwark needs to be interrupted and they are movable. Forgotten harbingers can't be moved and chain spawn blood horrors that slowly move towards boss. And you want to make sure these are nuked down and keep them slowed, stunned, and gripped, or knock them away from boss. If they reach boss, you go boom. A few seconds before boss casts Gruesome Disgorge, you'll see where the big adds will spawn in the form of voidy orbs. Big orb is the Lost Watcher, small orbs are the harbingers, and always try to aim the Gruesome Disgorge on top or near the big orbs so that players going down spawn next to the ads. You always want to focus down the harbinger and cleave the watcher and move it to other harbingers once one is dead. Now while Team A is dealing with the Void Realm, Team Omega Pepega deals with a few other mechanics. The raid will occasionally get hit by Crimson Rain, which is a healing absorb. Just heal, forehead. Then there's Grasp from Beyond. Players spawn tentacles at their location every second for 12 seconds. You can stack 2 of them before moving, as it takes 3 seconds for one to detonate. Or you can just stutter step with it. Goal is to not use up too much space. Keep in mind that these can damage Team A in the Void Realm, so you want to avoid that. So you can always aim to be on the opposite side of the room. When boss casts Spewing Hemorrhage, 2 beams spawn from its side, rotating counterclockwise. The active tank wants to aim this so it starts in front of the Void Realm players to give them more time to kill ads before needing to run away screaming from the beam. This beam pretty much one-shots you if you're hit, and both realms needs to dodge it. When Team A goes out from the Void Realm, new ads will spawn and Team Omega Pepega goes down next. After 2 sets of this, boss casts Gore Splatter, which is a 60-yard AoE around boss, dealing lethal damage. Don't be in it, simply run out. You can use Gateway to get out or back in. Avoid swimming around in the black blood, it deals an ungodly amount of damage. Following Gore Splatter, boss will deal 10% more damage, and it's just rinse repeat. Really? And yeah, that's pretty much it for this boss. If you have any questions at all, hit me up in the comments or become a patron, Twitch sub, or YouTube.
Alright, and that was it for the second boss. Again, it's a second boss, so it's not super exciting. This was honestly probably my least favorite boss that we tested, unfortunately. It's the second one though, so we won't have to spend that much time on it. But I think they also might have changed the RNG with how the ads spawn that will make it slightly more enjoyable. But yeah, it's just a split your raid into 2 groups, and like Stanky said, you're sending half of them down in the frontal at a time. So first frontal comes out. It's very scary if you saw the visual. I know you're not used to standing in scary looking frontals, but you must. That's what sends you downstairs. And you'll always want to aim it as a tank. You'll want to aim it at where the ads are spawning, which appears as a glowing purple voidy orb. So Team 1 should all be clumped around that. And then around when you go down in this frontal, just healers be aware there's an absorb called Crimson Rain. It does raid-wide damage and puts a healing absorb on everyone in the raid. So make sure you have absorbs showing on your raid frames if you don't already. If you need help with that, I'm sure plenty of people in Visage can help you get that set up on your frames. But yeah, you'll want to heal off the absorb off people quickly. Then once you're down there, there are ads. I guess I'll finish talking about this main phase first. There's the void zone that you want to be dropping. I drew a little diagram of it here. You can drop 2 or 3 puddles at a time. I guess they're technically tentacles. Sorry, not puddles. You can drop like 2 or 3 tentacles at a time before the first one you drop explodes. So you just kind of stutter step. So you'll drop 3 here, move forward, drop a couple more, move sideways, drop a couple more. And that's because, like Stanky mentioned, everyone can get hit by your tentacles, including people in the downstairs realm who are a little hard to see. You can still see them, they're just like translucent, a little see-through. So yeah, don't want to take up too much space with your tentacles. Frontal, we already talked about. Oh, the runaway when the boss explodes. We just took the world gate out. It was kind of tight, the timing on the explosion, so you definitely want to book it, use a speed boost, and get out right away. But yeah, that's it for the main phase. Both teams have to deal with this beam. I can actually, let's see. So, like, Stanky kind of talked about it, but I'm an expert artist. So you have the boss here, and let's say that your downstairs team is here and they're killing ads here. If you were the tank, you control where the beams spawn. So if I'll do the right way first. If I'm the tank here, the boss will always spawn perpendicular. I think that's the geographically correct way to word it. Perpendicularly to you. So this is the correct way to spawn the beams. You, if you, I can do like an incorrect way now because they'll rotate this way and you won't cut off your team. But let's say I'm a bad tank. Bad tank can be orange. And I am here. It's like, where do I want to put the bad tank? And in my wonderful downstairs team is here. I spawn the beam through them. They're going to be very unhappy because not only do they have to run to dodge it very quickly, they also, if there's ads left here, they can no longer kill the ads. So, yeah. That's me, the bad tank. Adine, you would never do that. Yeah, it's Steve for sure. Alright, back to the PDF. So yeah, tanks, you have a lot of power here. If you're angry at your raid team, you can you can murder them quite easily. But be aware, like I said, both teams have to dodge, so yeah. Good luck. So when you're downstairs, it's called the Unseeming Realm. There's 3 types of ads. There is the I don't know how to say this word, which is really bad because it's important to the story. Harbinger? I always want to say Harbinger. The Harbinger is a stationary ad. It's not movable. So this is ideally where you tank all the other ads on top of it, and it's just constantly spawning these little horror ads. The horror ads will move towards the boss. If they reach the boss, they explode. So your goal is to CC them, slow them, kill them, nuke them. That's why horrors are first priority. You gotta just AoE cleave them down, so don't like single target nuke them, of course. This is your opportunity to pad, enjoy DPS. But you want to cleave off the Harbinger. I hate that word. The other ad is the Watcher. It just requires interrupt assignments. It will channel into the boss. If you don't interrupt it, you will end up with a giant shield on the boss, which of course makes it more difficult to kill. Hard bringer. Okay, that's definitely not how you pronounce that, I mean, but I love it. Love it. So yeah, the tank will just pick up the Lost Watcher. This is the only ad that needs to get aggro and bring it onto the Harbinger. Illy will correct me, and our Fire Mage will correct me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I'm sure he's a lore nerd. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this boss. As soon as this team comes out, it's after 40 seconds, so you have to kill your ad in 40 seconds. One thing I didn't like about this boss was sometimes, like, in this diagram, the ads are all nicely clumped here, but sometimes there would be one on the other side, so this might have been a mythic only thing where it spawned 2 groups of ads. So you had to kill this. The beam had to be baited correctly. You had to run all the way across and kill the other ones, or you could send like a smaller team of interrupters or whatever CCers for the tiny ads over to handle the CC while the raid kills the big clumps and then crosses over. It was just kind of awkward, and all the spawns were RNG, and sometimes they could all spawn on one side and sometimes completely across the room. So hopefully that, oh, I am pronouncing it right, that's good. Hopefully the RNG is a little less there, but yeah. For Mythic, okay, so it adds a new mechanic called Blood Curdle. You're debuffed. The entire raid gets this debuff, so you'll all see a tiny circle around all of your friends, and you explode 5 seconds later. Pretty easy. It just requires more spread out positioning. Oh yeah, this one's going to be horrible for evokers, in my opinion. Or sorry, specifically preservation evokers, because everyone is like spread. It's a giant circular room and everyone is spread out. So yeah, good luck. I have no idea how you're going to handle that, but enjoy. Yeah, sorry, Volk. And then of course, more ad spawn in Mythic. That's to be expected. Alright, does chat have any questions about this boss? I guess I didn't go over the tank mechanic, but it's really just that frontal that sends you downstairs and controlling the beams. There's also one of those mechanics where if no one is in melee range, the boss will explode and wipe you, so definitely don't do that unless you are mad at your raid. But yeah, any questions for Bloodbound Horror? Because if not, we will go on to the last boss that I'm going to go over today, and then I can go over the rest tomorrow and Thursday before early expansion. But we will move on to heroic. I hate pronunciations. Rasha'nan? Rasha'nan? Sure.
What's up, everybody? Another beautiful day in Azeroth, and here's how to defeat heroic Rasha'nan in Nerub'ar Palace. We faced her in Dawnbreaker. Now it's time to finish the job. Tanks, keep an eye on Savage Assault and make sure to use defensive. 60% of unmitigated damage becomes a Savage Wound, dealing that damage over 18 seconds. Tank swap after this. Players targeted by Spinneret Strand gets a 10-yard circle around him, deals damage, spawns web on the ground, and binds players hit to the web. Moving 10 yards away, snap this, and deals a bit of raid damage. Make sure to move out and place these near the edge. Players targeted by infested spawn deals a high amount of nature damage to anyone within 5 yards and spawn a swarm of ads from God knows where. Tank, make sure to pick these up, stun, etc. to keep them controlled. They inflict infested bites, which is a stacking dot. But the fun starts with rolling acid. Targets 2 players and they spawn a wave going out from them. The direction it will travel is indicated by the wavy fading side of it. Now the goal is to have the raid in front of boss, and the 2 players targeted by this moves out, aiming the wavy fading side away from the raid. The brighter, smaller line towards the raid. Now if you get hit by the wave, you get stunned, take a ton of ticking damage. This is a bad thing. Now the wave will also turn all webs on the ground into acid pools, which is another reason to place these away from the raid. Boss can also cast something called Web Reeve. Targets an area right in front of the boss, dealing lethal damage split between players hit, but also tries to pull you off the platform. The pull gets a lot weaker based on the number of players hit, and you want most players to get hit by this. While testing, this was only cast after an intermission on normal and heroic, but on mythic it did it more often. Unsure if this will be the case for heroic as well, since we tested mythic after and it could have been changed. So be prepared for the intermission. When Rasha'nan reaches full energy, she flies away to another location. She can fly to a few different spots around the room, and this seemed to be RNG. Boss chain casts acidic eruption when she lands until interrupted, dealing raid-wide damage increased with every cast, so the raid needs to move over fast and interrupt. However, don't interrupt until most players are near the boss. She will cast Web Reeve as soon as you interrupt, and you need most players to soak this, or you die. You can use Warlock Gateway, Windrush, Roar to get to boss faster. Do watch out for the swirls. Swirls are bad. Following this, it's pretty much rinse repeat. The only difference is the order of abilities. They seem to change anytime Rasha'nan flies to a new location. You still deal with them the exact same way, but some platforms get more webs, some more ads, etc, etc. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions at all, hit me up in the comments or become a patron, Twitch sub, or YouTube member.
Alright, and I should have prefaced it, but this is actually the 4th boss in the raid. I just, Stanky doesn't have the 3rd boss done yet. I could not find it anyway, so we are skipping to the 4th boss. It's actually a linear raid until the 6th and 7th boss. You have a choice between Broodtwister and, Nexus Princess. Of course, how could I forget the Nexus Princess? So yeah, it's a linear. I like that. No choices, just go straight. W key. So yeah, this is technically the 4th boss. But here we have the QE guide. The tank mechanic is Savage Assault, and I guess it's very important to know that even if you survive the main damage blow, if you have forgotten to pop an external or a personal and you're like, oh, it's okay, I survived, whatever. Nope, it leaves a very nasty dot based on the amount of damage you didn't mitigate. So if you don't mitigate, you are going to bleed out, or your healers will love you because you are letting them parse. So however you want to look at that, just tanks pop a defensive. But kind of a boring one for tanks, in my opinion. However, I did like healing this quite a lot. So yeah, the main phase, you are just kind of handling the onslaught of mechanics. If you have the webs, like Stanky said, you really want to run out to the edge to drop them off for two reasons. One, if you hit other players with it, you get tethered together with a sticky web, and you have to run away from each other to break it, or you will be permanently slowed. So just run away, snap it, deals a little bit of damage, but yeah, avoid doing that. And then the second reason is when you clear them with these acid waves, it leaves a giant puddle of goop. And you do not want the giant puddle of goop to be on top of your raid. That's unfortunate, and your raid leader will yell at you. I know, because I will yell at you. For the other debuff circle that you can get, the green one, it is the webs was white. The ads are green circles. You kind of want to drop them close to your tanks and close to the boss because of AoE pad, everyone's favorite thing in the whole wide world. So you don't want to drop them like way out here because these little pesky bugs apply a very nasty dot. So again, do not get aggro on these. They can be aggroed for the first 50% of their health, and then they become immune to taunts and aggro and drop their table and just fixate random people. So that's when you want to nuke them very quickly and CC them. In Mythic, that'll be a lot more important, of course. And then the last easy mechanic of this phase is just that group soak. It's always going to be in front of the boss. It's not on a player or based on raid position. It's just always in front of the boss. You need to get in it. We had some funny moments on, I should have pulled up the clip. We had some funny moments on beta testing where we didn't have enough people in this, and on Mythic especially, it's not a knock back, it's a knock towards, I don't know, it's a very quick suck towards the boss. I don't know how to phrase it, but you just get bonked towards the boss and off the platform. It's lovely and hilarious if you don't have enough people in it. So definitely soak it. Don't be lazy. And then the last mechanic is these rolling acid things. I guess I can do... Should I do another paint? Let's go back to my paint window. So for the acid, I know Stanky mentioned it in his video. He talked about like going towards the wavy, like the lighter colors. But honestly, the easiest way to do it is, let's say I am a person right here on my raid. This is like really, I should have saved the last one. The raid is here, and the other person that gets it is here. We'll make it not super obvious. This person should obviously go, well, no, it depends on the... See, I'm not even giving you the right information. I'll give you a tricky one. Let's make this wide. So the easiest way to tell which direction to run is that the beam will always spawn on one side of your body, and you just want to run towards that side, because the beam is going to go like this. Or I guess it's more of a wave. It will always roll out this way. So if I were to incorrectly walk over this way, you can see where I'm going with this, right? The wave would go bloop on top of the raid. This is a great drawing. So if you have the beam, again, the easiest way to deal with it is just whatever side of your body it's on, run that way. So this other person, and it'll always be different for the two people that are DUF. So the other person will go this way, bloop, bloop, bloop. I just got back while Brock playing tic-tac-toe. It does look like tic-tac-toe. Woo, we won. So yeah, that's it. Just whatever side of your body it's on, run. And you have to move quickly. You have to identify it's on you quickly. This might be a private aura. I don't think we were really getting notified on raid testing. You have, I think, a red arrow above your head, and you have to identify it quickly because you don't have a lot of time, and you need to have this safe zone for your raid so that your raid does not get stunned. It's a very nasty stun. Nobody likes being stunned. Alright, let's go back to the PDF. Yeah, that's like the hardest mechanic, I guess, is the waves, and you'll be dealing with that the entire time. For intermission, like you saw, the boss jumps away, and it's kind of random where it spawns. It'll usually go like pretty far down the bridge, but you'll deal with this a few times during the fight, and it can go anywhere. There didn't seem to be any sort of like pattern or consistency there, but it's not a big deal. It's like fine RNG. It's not that annoying. And Warlock Gates, Stampeding Roars, Windrush Totems, etc. are super, super good while you're crossing the bridge, dodging the swirlies. Again, like I mentioned, At the end of intermission, there's one of those group soak mechanics where if there's not enough people in, you go flying off the platform. So please don't interrupt the boss until your whole raid has come across. I know there's like super fast classes like druids. You do not want to interrupt before your whole raid catches up with you. Otherwise, you won't have enough people in the soak and you will go flying off of the platform, which is never fun for anyone. Actually, it is fun. It's quite enjoyable. It's a nice little journey. But we'll try to avoid that. We like loot more. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Intermission is not that bad. Sometimes you'll have ads up. Sometimes they'll be reaching that 50% threshold and they'll start fixating players. So that gets a little spicy with the healing. And then mythic mechanics. So that web, that tether web that I was talking about, I think it kind of just like mythic testing on beta was weird. We couldn't quite understand this mechanic because it seemed to do nothing, but like the whole raid kind of got connected to a partner and you just ran and snapped it immediately and it didn't do anything. So I'm sure that will change by the time we get here on live, but it applies a debuff to the player that causes you to explode around you as well. So in theory, you kind of want people running in different directions, so not everyone is exploding on top of the raid and stuff like that. But yeah, like the dungeon journal says massive damage, but like I said, in testing it was not, so we'll see how it ends up. And then the swirlies that you already should be dodging because you're a good raider, you don't take avoidable damage. They will stun you if you're caught, so just more punishing if you fail to dodge. But yeah, that is it for Rasha'nan. I think I covered everything. It was fun to heal. There was just like a lot of raid-wide damage like at all times. So I don't know. I enjoyed that as a resto druid. There's little ads, so you get your AoE pad just pretty much consistently through the fight. Everyone's dropping off that infested debuff. But yeah, does anyone have any questions about Rasha'nan? Again, this is the 4th boss of the instance. The 3rd one is Sikran, which I'll do as soon as Stanky makes a video. Hello everyone. Welcome back. We are doing the remaining 4 bosses of the new raid. We covered 3 yesterday. Let me actually pull them up in my lovely paint window. This is the order of Nerub'ar Palace bosses. Yesterday we covered Ulgrax, Bloodbound Horror, and then Rasha'nan? Jesus, I still can't pronounce that boss, so that's good. Good to know. We didn't cover Sikran because Stanky had not finished his video guide yet, but it turns out I'm not blind. He just hasn't done it yet. So I'm just going to review the PDF for that one without the boss guide. But first, I did screenshot a picture of the room just so you can like see the room a little bit. This isn't going to look great, but yeah, so it's just like a big circular room, which is important for the mechanics that we'll go over. And I hope everyone is having a lovely day. Don't even know what day it is. All I know is releases tomorrow. Alright, and just in case you didn't tune in yesterday, the format of these is usually watching Stanky's video first and then going over my 1-page PDF guides that you can find on Questionably Epic. I believe there are chat commands for at least the QE guides. Meant to add a Stanky one, not sure. Hey, Uli. But yes, so Sikran is that room I just showed you. Like I said, the video guide is not done yet by Stanky, so go ping him and yell at him. Just kidding, don't do that, please. But we will go over the PDF. So the main mechanic, it's a very rinse and repeat. This is the 3rd boss, so it's not super difficult. It's a very rinse and repeat fight. So a little boring for tanks. You're just essentially going to start in one side of the room and circle around the room as it fills up with void puddles that come from certain mechanics. The first mechanic you'll encounter is called Phase Blades, and it's where 3 players, think of this as the Forgotten Experiments debuff, if you can remember Aberrus, where you had the boss charge and like a blade dashy towards the 3 players that you sent to the side of the raid. So these purple explosions are the blades. Every player that gets hit drops a little clone of themselves, a little shadowy clone. And anyone extra that gets hit also drops a shadowy clone, which is really bad. So you don't want to be in the way of that, and you don't want to clump these. You want to be loose spread. Once you drop those, the next mechanic, the second part of this rinse and repeat, is decimate. Certain people in your raid will get a blue arrow above their head, and a line will shoot out from the boss to that player. And you use this line of explosion not to kill your friends, as tempting as that is, but you use this line of explosion to break the clones. So the little shiny clones that your friends dropped, you're just going to aim your beam towards them. You can get more than one with one beam. And every one you get explodes and leaves a little stacking dot. So healers, enjoy. This was actually super fun to heal on raid testing, especially when your raid messed up and dropped more clones, because that means more stacks of the dot. It's lovely. It's a healer's dream. And you can save the day. It's not like a Tindral seed mechanic or a Farrak seed mechanic. You can out heal. On beta, at least, we out healed massive misplays. It was a lot of fun. So I like that. It's only a third boss, so it shouldn't be that punishing. But yeah, that is honestly, oh, I left out that when you break the clone, it disappears and it turns into a void puddle that I mentioned at the start. That's what is making your tanks have to rotate around the room. And then you'll drop your next set here, and then your next set, well, I guess you can't see my mouse, eh? You drop your next set to the right of the puddles that you see, and you just keep circling. There's also swirlies. They weren't too bad. I'm not saying you can stand still in tranquility in them, but you can stand still in tranquility in them. But don't tell your raid leader I said you could do that. And then at the end of this phase, any of those clones that are still alive, they will just explode and apply that stacking dot. The boss will also explode, and if you are within that explosion, you will get knocked off the platform. It's very punishing, so melee, I'm sorry, but you have to pull off the boss, or you will just die. It's a very large knockback, not that I know from experience. The bottom of my PDF here is just giving more examples of how you should place your, they're called another word I can't pronounce, simulacrums, that are the little clones. The red person is doing it incorrectly. They are in the line of the phased blades, so they're going to drop a little soul that they didn't need to drop. As you can see right on the right, it leaves an extra clone that you would then need to break out with your beam. But yeah, that's pretty much it. In Mythic, the difference is that if you place a clone next to another clone, it will explode. It will just start pulsing damage. It's not healable. It wasn't healable on beta. It just kind of will wipe you. So it just means you have to spread out more. And if someone isn't paying attention and is standing on top of you and doesn't realize you have phase blades, then you just wipe because 2 clones get dropped. But yeah, that is it for Sikran. Again, third boss of the instance, so not too challenging, very simple rinse and repeat, but it was a lot of fun to heal. It looked fun to DPS. It's just a single target blast. Not a ton of movement. Does anyone have any questions for Sikran? Sorry we didn't have the video, but the next boss we do have a video for. And the next boss we're going to be looking at is Broodtwister, which is the, I will call it the brood mother of this raid, if you remember that from Vault. But yeah, we will go ahead. I don't think there's any questions in chat, so we will go ahead and watch Stankie's video of Broodtwister.
And here's how to defeat heroic Broodtwister in the Nerub'ar Palace. Boss room is split into 3, each side covered in 3 different type of eggs, and each side having extra eggs of one type. Players targeted by experimental dosage gains a circle around them, and when it expires, it cracks any eggs hit by it. Doing so spawns an ad corresponding to the type of egg you cracked. The long egg gives you worms, big egg Big Spider, and the cluster of baby eggs gives you parasites. Big Spider needs to be tanked and gains a stacking damage increase until you defeat it. Worm needs to be interrupted, their poison burst hurts a lot. Parasites fixate on players and cast Infest, making them spawn more parasites. These needs to be controlled and burst down. Stun, knock up, roots, etc. and fixated players needs to get the hell out of there. Kite if needed, unless you want a pad. At the start of the fight and when Broodtwister gains full energy, boss will beeline towards the nearest canister, so you can choose which ad side you want to begin with. When boss chugs the canister, he deals raid-wide AoE damage and applies healing absorbs. Just heal forehead. Now this side will start to slowly fill up with black blood, which deals ticking damage and applies more healing absorbs to players within it. Don't take a bath in it. If this blood reaches an egg, it will hatch the egg and deal raid-wide damage over 30 seconds and the ad gets empowered, making them a lot harder to deal with. It's not an instant wipe if this happens, but you for sure want to avoid it. Goal is to clear each side of its eggs before they're hatched by the black blood. Now you get exactly 3 sets of 4 experimental dosages before one side is fully flooded by black blood, which is the exact amount of eggs on each side. However, you need to prio the eggs close to the canister, so the egg right next to the canister on each side needs to always be broken out first, along with 2-3 of the next line of eggs. Otherwise they'll get mutated. Second set of dosages needs to finish any eggs in the middle section, and the third breaks any remaining eggs. So you have some freedom in which eggs you want to break, but not a whole lot. Now you want to assign range DPS to always be ready to interrupt the worm ads when they spawn, as they cannot be moved, and you want to tank a boss near worm whenever possible. You need to assign stuns, bind, vortex, etc. for whenever you clear or crack a cluster of eggs, and the DPS should instantly swap to the parasites. Big Spider should be cleaved down, but make sure they die before they stack too much damage increase, or tank gets sad. One heal. Then you want to avoid hatching more than 2 parasites or worms at the same time. It gets real tricky dealing with a lot of them at the same time. Now this is no longer a private aura, so there will be weak auras for experimental dosage when raid is out that will help coordinate egg breaking, so keep an eye out for that. And lastly, players targeted by sticky web gets a huge circle around them. They get slowed, and when you dispel it, it deals damage to anyone hits and roots them. Ideally, you want to move out and get dispelled so you don't root anyone. Keep in mind that you can dispel this on yourself with anything that removes roots like druid shapeshift, so avoid using those until you're away from other players. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments or
Alright, so that was Broodtwister, which, as you can see from this lovely diagram, is the 5th or 6th boss of the raid. This is the one choice you get. It's otherwise linear. You can choose to go Broodtwister or Nexus Princess first, and that's just going to depend on tuning. I think Broodtwister is going to be easy once you get it, but like it seems complicated because you have to have a map planned in advance, and Nexus Princess is just kind of like you can go in and smash your head against it as much as you want without having an extensive plan. But I think Broodtwister will probably be easier, but don't quote me on that. So swapping to the PDF for Broodtwister, like Stinky talked about, when you start this fight, you need to have a plan starting with what container you're going to break first, because the boss will start draining from a container right when you pull, which is what triggers that sanguine void to start creeping out, and it'll start creeping out towards the eggs. There's 3 different options. In Mythic, it's important, and I guess a little bit on Heroic, because each of the 3 zones has a higher population of a certain type of ad. So container 3 down here has more worms, container 2 has more of the little spiders, the leeches, and then I shouldn't call them spiders, they're like little leeches, blood-sucking leeches, and then the first container has more spiders, which is the tank buster. On beta we started with container 1, we thought that was easiest. And then container 2 was just a lot of AoE CC, so I think the probably preferred order will be container 1, container 2, and then container 3, because the worms over here need interrupted and they don't move. So that becomes kind of annoying. You have to assign interrupts in groups to handle the worms. But yeah, like Stankie's video said, the Sanguine Void will start creeping out. Any egg it touches, it will break open and empower, which gives it a little extra oomph. So you want to try to avoid that by using the sets of the debuff to break the eggs. And like I said, it's not a private aura or wasn't during beta testing, so there will probably be a weak aura that's based around world markers, and you'll just get assigned to go break an egg. That's my guess for how it'll be handled, but we'll see how it ends up. It's not too bad. There's 12 eggs in each container and 3 rounds of debuffs, so on beta we didn't officially assign anything. We just kind of used our brains to break out the ones that were about to get Sanguine Voided. And yeah, this map is not accurate up here, so don't trust that. But there are already maps out there if you Google. The Dispel, just be aware, Stankie did mention it, like Druid Shapeshift will automatically dispel you, and anyone in your circle gets webbed. So that's a little annoying, because like as a Druid, when I'm trying to run quickly out, I often go into cat form. Don't do that. Your friends will be very unhappy with you, because there's swirlies raining down, so being rooted in the swirlies is not fun. Not a fun time at all. But yeah, the 3 types of eggs I kind of already talked about, but the spider is the only thing you need to taunt. You just want to cleave. This boss it had a lot of health, so I think the challenge with this boss is going to be not AoEing when there's ads, right? You want to, kind of like you did on Tendril, where you want most people single target, blasting the boss, and only enough cleave and AoE to handle the ads, like the minimum you need to assign. So, yep, the spider, you want to keep it on the boss, and you really don't want to commit any damage to the spider. You just want to hope your tank can handle it. Obviously, if it becomes unmanageable, you're going to have to put some more in, but just passive cleave is great for that. The worms, they're not movable, and you will have 2 up at the same time at some points in time, so you can't tank the boss on both. Obviously, just send a little mini team over to interrupt one while you cleave down the other one, and then shift where the boss is to the other worm. If you let that cast go off, it can get overwhelming quickly, so yeah, definitely have an interrupt priority. And then the blood parasites, honestly, I thought these were the most annoying things. It's 5 of them pop out of each egg, or is it 10? I can't remember. It's either 5 or 10. Doesn't really matter because you're just AoE CCing them regardless. But they're fast and they fixate random people. If they touch you, they spawn more 10 seconds later. And so things can get out of control very quickly, because once they're spread around the room, you can't AoE CC them anymore, or you've already used up all your CC. So do not let these things touch you, please. This is what will wipe you, is you just get lazy and you let one get in and spawn 2 more, and those 2 more spawn 2 more, and it's real bad. So try to kite them under the boss, AoE CC them, nuke them down, and yeah, get back on the boss. Mythic was super interesting because you needed 2 of the debuffs, so you get a circle around you to break the egg out. You actually need 2 players to be standing on the same egg to break it out, which obviously makes it a lot more challenging. There was also an aspect of you can't break out every single egg, so some of them will just automatically get empowered by the Sanguine, and of course maybe someone will solve it by the time it's live, and our beta test was not correct, but you're just going to have to be dealing with a lot. You're going to have to make a lot more decisions that have pros, cons. There's probably going to be multiple ways to kill this boss in Mythic. And yeah, it should be fun to watch in the Race to World First for sure, how they handle it. And then another change in Mythic that's important is the container you go to will automatically empower all ads from that container. So container 1 will automatically empower all spiders. Container 3 will empower all worms, and container 2 will empower all of the leeches for the rest of the fight. So it adds an extra option there where you have to pick what your poison is. So again, I think worms are probably the most evil. Their cast time increases when they're empowered, and it's just, nobody likes interrupts. So yeah, but we'll see how it ends up playing out. Yeah, this was seems a little complicated, not too bad once you learn it. I think like rekills will be easier than than they sound. Does anyone have any questions for Broodtwister? If not, we will go ahead and move on to the next boss, which is Nexus Princess. This one was a huge fan favorite on beta. The visuals looked awesome. She looks awesome. Just the whole thing is awesome. So pretty excited for you to see this boss.
What's up, everybody? Another beautiful day in Azeroth, and here's how to defeat heroic Nexus Princess in Nerub'ar Palace. Time to have fun with rifts! Now, at the start of the fight and following every intermission, several ranged players will get circles around them. Upon expiration, they spawn a Nether Phantom. Shortly after, these phantoms turns into Nether Rifts that will pull players towards them. And well, if you get pulled into one, you die. When this happens, Nexus Princess will also spawn a Nether Rift at the active tank's location. So the goal is to place these rifts in such a way that you offset their pull in effect, so that you don't die. This can be done in a lot of ways. For example, building a pentagon or hexagon allows you to just AFK and get sucked into the middle. But you can also have all phantom rifts in a line and use tank rift to offset it. This will require you to run against the sucky, but it is very manageable. Following a rift, all rifts except boss rift turns back into a phantom. They will in turn target a random melee player and after a bit dash through them. And where they end their dash, a new rift will spawn, making it a lot trickier to fully control where your next rift will end up. You can of course fully control that, but it for sure gets more hectic and requires a lot more coordination. For example, if you drop all phantoms in a line, you can have them always dash straight across the room and end up in a line on the opposite side. And you do that back and forth while only repositioning boss to drop tank rift on the opposite side to help pull you the other way. Or you can have them dash around in a square formation around boss. Or even, you know, just YOLO it and tanks do geometry on the fly to offset the pull. Now, if you're targeted by a phantom, their beam will turn red for you, but will be purple for anyone else. On top of this, there's Queen's Bane. Any player hit by any phantom mechanic like range spawning the phantom or phantom dashing through a player, they will get afflicted with Queen's Bane. And shortly after, poop out a ton of balls. Balls are bad, don't take them to the face. Now I know it should be obvious to most players that getting hit by avoidable mechanics are bad, but here you will also get a shining beacon around you screaming, "I messed up, I got hit by something I could have avoided." Of course some are unavoidable, but still. Now players with Queen's Bane, make sure to spread, move away from raid a bit. The blue lines around your character shows in what direction you'll poop balls. Phantoms will also cast Nexus daggers spawning several lines. Lines are bad, they also inflict Queen's Bane and do damage. Now on top of this, if any player drops down below 10% or 10% at any point in the fight, you instantly die. So effectively you do this fight with 90% health. So tanks, remember, if you're sitting on 11%, you are not safe. When boss reaches 100 energy, intermission starts. Boss goes into the middle of the room and starts filling up pie slices with delicious void. These will always correlate to the lines on the floor. On top of this, several players get targeted by Regicide, which deals a ton of damage to anyone hit. It's basically a void Firoc line. So avoid running all over the place with these, and if possible, only run along your line. Range should always be further out. It makes it a lot easier for other players to dodge them. When the Starless Night cast ends, phase 1 repeats, but with one additional phantom, which means one more rift and more dagger lines. While testing, the third intermission also had one additional void cone to dodge. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions at all, hit me up in the...
Alright, and that is it for the Nexus Princess, which again was a fan favorite for sure from beta testing. I think it was probably almost everyone's favorite boss that we tested, just because it looks so freaking cool. But yeah, so this one I think also is maybe one of the more fun. I'm not a main tank, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's an enjoyable one to tank because your control of those void zones, like the void zone suck that Stanky was talking about. There's like, you know, the 5 that go on raiders, but then the tank also gets one. So the tank can kind of correct any mistake a raider made by filling in a gap so that the suck, it is pulling you in all the cardinal directions, so you end up actually going nowhere. So I don't know, maybe I'm overhyping how much fun that is for a tank to handle, but it's better than just swap at one stack. So they have to pay attention where they're dropping their void zone as well. But yeah, so this one, it's another kind of dance that you rinse and repeat mechanics. Players will need to drop those phantoms in good spots. Because of how the mythic mechanic works, which I'll go over later, I know Stinky mentioned 2 different strategies. One where you can drop them all in a line, and then one, and the tank drops one on the other side of the room to counter that suck pull. And then the other one was to kind of drop it in a circle around the room. I personally like the circle around the room better, but I want to see how it plays out on live, obviously. We didn't get a lot of time to test on beta, but I think that's what you'll do in Mythic, so you might as well practice it in Heroic. I'm a big advocate for just doing assuming it doesn't add multiple wipes to your Heroic prog. I think just practice Mythic strategy when you can to make it easier. But yeah, so the raid will just kind of, you can put markers out, they'll spread around, drop their rifts, you'll get sucked in the middle, you won't really have to battle the pull. Just be aware if you were a player that did have to drop off a rift, you're going to be shooting those orbs you saw in the video. They're a lot like Prideful, if you remember that affix from whatever season. I'm sure chat will tell me what season it is because your memory is better than mine. But Prideful was pretty popular affix. It's the exact same thing. You want to aim your little missiles so it doesn't hit the raid that is in the center of the room. And the best way we found was to just shift to the left of your clone. That way you have plenty of space. Everyone's got their own spot to poop out the orbs. And like Stanky mentioned, if you get hit by an orb, you continue to spawn them, right? So like if I get hit by an orb, a little bit later, I'm going to shoot out more orbs, and it can get out of control pretty quickly. Season 1 was Prideful. Okay, thank you. So it can get out of control quickly. Same with the daggers, the purple lines on the floor you saw in the video. If you get touched by that, you'll get Queen's Bane, which is that dot. When it expires, you'll start pooping orbs. So avoidable damage. This one you cannot stand in Trank. You do not want to tranquility and bad mechanics on this one. You have to just move out of it. It's not worth it. Definitely not worth it. So yeah, that is P1. Prioritize playing safe. Oh, okay, the stay above 10% health mechanic, the, what's it called, Reaper. I'm not a huge fan of this mechanic. It's essentially you're playing the fight with 90% health instead of 100% health. There's no, I guess maybe if it has a cool visual, we didn't notice it on beta. If it has like a really cool death visual, then maybe I'll be more okay with it. But I would rather it be, like, if you get below 10% health, you get crystallized in a void crystal, and if someone clicks you in 3 seconds, you're okay. Otherwise, you instantly die. Like, I'd rather have some sort of mechanic like that, other than just, like, you're playing the fight with 90% health, because that's kind of just a whatever mechanic. But do be aware, you have slightly less health for what it's worth. Phase 2, the intermission, it is just pie slices around the room. Pie slices fill up with void damage. You want to dodge them. Making it slightly more complicated is it's the exact same beams as Farok Blazes. They're just purple, which purple is prettier in my opinion, so we'll take it. But it's the same concept as Blaze, where if you have the mechanic, if you have the beam, instead of running around and making everyone panic, it's better to just plant and have people move around you. It's just easier than trying to guess where people are going to move. And then let me pull up my handy dandy paint window just to explain the pie slices. So you're in a circular room. Bloop. My art skills are phenomenal. You're in a circular room and there's pie slices literally on the ground. So you could just, when you get in the room, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's lines on the ground. The best way to handle intermission, especially if you're at range, is just to back up to give melee space and play across the line. So if this pie slice fills up, then you just shift. And you don't have a lot to move because you're right here on the line. That is how I would recommend doing it if you don't want to die. But yeah, does anyone have any questions for Nexus Princess? I think I covered most everything. Yeah, it's full single target. Mobility is big because there is a lot of dodging. Oh, if you do get sucked into these void puddles, you just die. Like, there's no, I guess maybe if you have an immunity, of course, or you're a tank, but you do not want to get sucked in. They're very bad. Hello, Marzipans. How are you? You'll have to say your favorite raid boss from raid testing. I was talking that Nexus Princess was a lot of people's favorites, for sure. But yeah, if no one has any questions about Nexus Princess, we will continue on to the last boss, which is the Silken Court. The actual last boss, the queen herself, was not available for raid testing. The dungeon journal is out there, and there's one video that's been published that goes over what they think the fight will be like based on the dungeon journal. It's a pretty cool video, but nobody actually knows yet, so we don't have a guide ready for it. But it looks like a very fun fight. You love Broodtwister. I actually like Broodtwister a lot. So I get kind of nervous because I was not a huge fan of Broodmother in Vault, but I think it's a better version of Broodmother. Because like hiding the beams is just a lot more complicated, and like the order of eggs was not as obvious in Broodmother, whereas in Broodtwister it's pretty obvious which eggs you need to break out. So yeah, I do like Broodtwister more. I fear that the community will be afraid of it because of Broodmother, but hopefully by the time it's live, it is good. But yeah, if there are no other questions from chat about Nexus Princess, we will go ahead and move on to Stankie's video on the Silken Court, which yeah, is the last boss we'll be reviewing today.
In Azeroth, and here's how to defeat heroic Silken Court in Nerub'ar Palace. Two bosses that share health, both needs to be tanked, but only a Nerub'ar is movable. Sky spin or jump around the outside of the room, multiple phases, and a boatload of mechanics. Phase 1 lasts until boss reaches full energy or 66% health. Main mechanic here is a noob's reckless charge. Every now and then Sky Spinner will spawn giant swirls at several player's location that turns into web on the ground with a cocoon in the middle. If 2 or more players stand inside a web and moves over the cocoon, it will detonate and web these players together. When a noob charges, you need him to charge through 2 sets of webs before hitting the wall, or everyone dies. So you want to assign at least 2 teams of 2 to deal with this. The pair moves into the web patch, one moves over the cocoon, then you extend the web string so it crosses over a noob's charge. Make sure you don't move too far apart or the web will snap, indicated by the big circle around you when you're webbed. A Nerub'ar will always burrow, then charge straight towards Skyn wherever Skyn is in the room. So you can always pre-position yourself with the web. When Skyn Spinner casts Venomous Rain, everyone needs to spread and healers be ready to flex a little. Tanks be mindful of a noob's frontal cone. Periodically a noob will spawn 3 ads that fixates players and tries to nibble on their feet. Make sure to stun, slow, etc. to keep him controlled, and kite if you're fixated. If possible, try to grip or knock him towards a noob so you can cleave him down. Skyn Spinner will jump around a lot, so when possible, try to move a noob to Skyn. Tanks, you want to swap on 1 to 3 stacks of Piercing Strike. Stacks will reset during intermission, so you can actually solo tank each boss, pending tuning. At full energy or 66% intermission starts. A noob burrows away and Skyn Spinner leaps into the middle, gains an absorb and starts casting Shatter Existence. And the phase ends when the absorb is depleted. During this, several voidy web cones shoot out one by one, deals a ton of damage and knocks you back if hit, making subsequent cones harder to dodge if you survive. Try to always keep track of which cone will detonate next and move into it as soon as it does so you'll be safe for the next ones. Following this, phase 2 starts, Skynspinner gets empowered and a noob no longer charges, but will still spawn ads and has a frontal cone. Main mechanic for phase 2 is the Cataclysmic Entropy and a noob's Stinging Swarm. A noob will debuff 3 players with Stinging Swarm, which lasts forever, dealing ticking damage and increases that player's damage taken by 50%. When you dispel it, it jumps to the nearest player or Skynspinner. When Skynspinner casts Cataclysmic Entropy, you need to dispel Stinging Swarm, so they jump to Skynspinner, because at 3 stacks of this boss or players gets disoriented and takes 150% increased damage for 12 seconds. However, a Stinging Swarm dot only lasts for 12 seconds on boss, so you need to dispel all 3 in quick succession or it's a wipe. And if all 3 goes on a player, they will also get disoriented and you lose the debuff and it's a wipe. Boss will always jump into the middle to cast this, so you can place 3 marks around where she will be and have Stinging Swarm players move to those to avoid the debuff jumping between the players. Other than that, every now and then Skynspinner will pull the entire raid to her location and web them together and start casting a giant AoE. Don't be inside the purple circle when it goes off unless you're journeying for the great beyond. And you move 30 yards away to snap the webs. When boss reaches full energy again or 33% HP, second intermission starts. This time Skynspinner takes a break and a noob goes into the middle, gains an absorb. During this you need to dodge circles like on Kurog, but on crack. And if you get hit, you get spiked and stunned until the spike gets nuked down. Avoid taking spikes up the old, well, you know. When the absorb is depleted, phase 3 starts, which is a mix of phase 1 and 2. On crack. A noob will charge again, but you don't get web patches anymore and you need to instead save the webs from Skynspinner Web Vortex and use those for the charge. So again, you want 2 teams of 2 to be in charge of the web, but this time it's random who gets webbed. So you need to use the power of communication so that at least 2 and 2 manages the webbing. You will still be getting Stinging Swarms that you need to dispel onto Skynspinner, but yeah, everything is very scripted and timer based, but due to this, you might need to have Stinging Swarm debuff up for a long time before dispelling them onto Skynspinner, and same thing with being webbed for a long time before charge. Oh, and a noob will also do its intermission circles a bit during this phase. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions at all, hit me up in the comments or become a patron, Twitch sub, or YouTube.
All right, well that sounds easy, right? Easy peasy boss with like 1 or 2 mechanics to worry about. That's it. Not a big deal. Just kidding. This boss was absolutely bonkers in raid testing. Like on heroic, obviously it was manageable and we killed it. But on mythic, oh my goodness. Like it reminded me so much of Tindril raid testing where you just wipe 10 seconds in because there's so many mechanics happening at the same time. But in heroic, I think the nice thing about this boss is that you're introduced to the mechanics slowly and it's just P3 that gets a little hectic, but by the time you reach P3, hopefully you've mastered the mechanics you're dealing with and they combine them all together and you just have to do it all at the same time. But yeah, phase 1, the big mechanic, like you saw, is the fact that you need to assign players to groups of 2 people to get webbed together. I did this on beta and honestly it was a lot of fun. So if you enjoy contributing to your raid and helping your raid leader not be stressed out, definitely volunteer if you're a mobile class. I play Resto Druid, which is pretty mobile. I don't know if you'll want that many healers on this job, but I think Resto Druid can do it pretty well. And then like hunters, things like that are great for it. But you'll just want to plan that in advance and you need 2 groups of 2. They will go to one of those web puddles that's been dropped on the ground and they'll walk into it together so that they get connected. Anyone else that's in that puddle with them will also get connected. So make sure to yell at your friends to stay away from you. You want to have alone time with you and your partner. So once you get tethered, don't break it. It's that giant white circle you saw in the video. If you guys get too far away, it'll snap and you will not be able to stop a Nerub'ar charge. The charge is very obvious. It happens at the same time, every pull, so you'll get into a nice little rhythm. And that's pretty much it in phase 1. That's the big mechanic. You just have to stop the charge. If you don't go through the 2 webs, then you wipe. And then there's things like a frontal. There's some ads that spawn that can be CC'd. And Mythic especially, this is a boss that people think Blood Decay will be really great on because of their mass grip. So yay, another tier of Blood Decay. Who would have ever guessed that? Not me. And then, yeah, speaking of tanks, you do split your tanks up. We did 1 tank per boss. And they might have swapped in Mythic on transitions. I don't know if Sean is still in the chat, but he would know because he tanked it in our Mythic testing. They might have swapped during intermission, but not during the phases themselves, at least. You just kind of took it until you transitioned. It didn't do that much damage. The tank stacking mechanic. But yeah, to end intermission 1... the spinner boss will go into the center and become, I guess not immune, but shielded. You have to break the shield while dodging the portions of room that are filling up with web. I called this part Simon Says, and there's a really easy way to figure out this web dance. So hopefully you remember from the video what I'm talking about. Like, pie slices fill up with webs. I think there's 6 total. So it'll do pie slice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it can be any pattern. It's not set. And you kind of have to watch in, like, you're playing Simon Says, where you want to go to a safe zone and you don't want to be in the next one that's going to explode. But the easiest way to do this is, let's say I don't want to make a circle. Let's say the first pie slice is this one. All you have to do, and then you can turn your brain off, is look for the second pie slice. So let's say the second pie slice is this one. Then you know instantly where you're going to stand, and that's right here. Why, Broccoliz, do I want to stand right there? Well, if this one is the first one to go off, as soon as it explodes, it's safe. So you can instantly shift into where it's safe. And you know that the spot you're standing at currently is also safe because it's not the second one to explode. That's over to the right. So all you need to do, again, see where the first one is, walk towards it. See where the second one is, don't be in that spot. And then instantly move into the first one once it explodes. And then you can just stand there the entire rest of the phase. It's very easy if you do it that way. If that didn't make sense, rewatch this, and I promise it will. Or when you're doing it live, it'll make sense. But yeah, after that intermission, after you break the shield, you go into phase 2, which is where that dispel mechanic pulls into play. And the order of mechanics is always going to be that the spinner boss will pull you to it. The whole raid will get sucked to the spinner boss. You'll get tethered to a friend, and you just want to run out of the spinner boss's explosion. So you get sucked in, run out, break your tethers. In phase 2, break your tethers. That's very key. In phase 3, you need those tethers to stop a Nerub'ar's charge, just like P1. Very tricky. But for this, you just want to break them because they slow you and you don't need them. All you're worried about in P2 is the dispel mechanic, which, like Stanky talks about, when you dispel it, it will bounce to the nearest player or enemy, which ideally is spinner. And you're going to want to time the dispel, especially that last dispel, to go onto the boss when it's casting the explosion. I think it's Cataclysmic Entropy? Yes, that's it. It will wipe your raid if it gets off. So you got to wait for him to jump into the middle of the raid. He starts channeling that, and you get your last dispel to jump to him, and the boss gets stunned. In Mythic, you definitely have to time this more because the dot is permanent when it's on a player, but when you dispel it onto the boss, it has I think it's like a 10-second, and then it'll disappear. So if you dispel one too early, in 10 seconds, it's going to disappear, and you no longer will be able to stack it to the 3 that you need to stun the boss. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of practice with timing and lining up those 3 dispels, boom, 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 right before the giant AoE goes off. So yeah, I'll compare it to like a Tendril dispel mechanic where you have to go in the right spot. You have to not dispel too quickly, not dispel too slowly. It's a very similar concept to that. So we'll see how it plays out on live, but on beta it was pretty fun. when people were paying attention. And then you go into intermission 2, which is very similar to the first intermission. It's just a noob that's shield in the middle that you gotta break out, and you're dodging rings of damage in different patterns. Pretty fun. It's you're trying to maximize your DPS to get out of that phase to break that shield, but you also have a lot of movement, and you don't want to get stunned because you are perma-stunned until a friend breaks you out. So yeah, it's pretty fun intermissions. And then of course you go to the last phase, which is, it looks pretty brief down here, but that's because you already know all of the mechanics. You just have to execute them at the exact same time. So it's a lot. Everyone's going to be assigned a job, right? Your healers are going to be calling dispels, or, you know, reading the weak aura that will call dispels. People with the debuff have to know when to move into the spinner boss. People that get sucked to the boss and tethered together, you have to on the fly call which 2 groups are not breaking their tethers, because you need 2 alive to stop that charge, to stop a Nerub'ar charge. It's just like every single person in your raid will have a job, and it will rotate based on the mechanics that are assigned to them. So it's going to be absolute chaos, hopefully in the best way possible, and you're just going to hope to kill the boss before you lose your mind. One thing, I guess we did kind of cheat on heroic, because after a certain amount of time the bosses just stopped doing mechanics, so we didn't really get to see the super chaoticness. We saw it for like a minute or 2, and then they just stopped doing mechanics and we killed them, and it was fine. Which will obviously probably not happen on live. But yeah, if you think that's not enough mechanics, on Mythic, the additional mechanic is Mark of Paranoia and Mark of Rage. So you'll split your raid into 2 groups, and based on what boss you're near, you will get one of those 2 marks. They're, I believe, blue and orange. I'm sure someone will correct me in chat if you tested Mythic. But I think it's blue and orange. You'll drop an orb at certain times during the fight. Every player in your raid will drop an orb, either orange or blue, and you have to then rotate spots in the room to soak the opposite colored orb. So if I'm an orange, I dropped an orange orb, I gotta rotate to the other side to pick up an orb from the other half of raid. And by the way, if you touch each other in your opposite colors, you explode. So yeah, a little bit of extra fun. And that mechanic on its own would be dangerous and scary and difficult, but it's that mechanic plus literally everything else. You have to dispel under the boss. You have to get 2 players grouped and tethered together. You have to stretch the web across so that a noob charges through. It was just chaos. Absolute madness. But hopefully it will be fun. This is the boss I'm most looking forward to in the Race to World First, for sure, because it's going to be chaos. Best way. Hello cat, hello bot. Yes, okay, thank you, raid guides. I should have known that was the command. I was trying everything and failing. But yeah, that is it. Oh, in Mythic as well, you need 3 groups of people to break a Nerub'ar charge rather than the 2. And on normal, it's just 1 group, so. Again, I like practicing good habits in normal for future difficulties, so my guides are specifically tailored for heroic strategies. But yeah. That was a lot. Does anyone have any questions about Silken Court? Or any of the other bosses, honestly, if you have thought of something that you missed. Or if you raid tested and you have a favorite. I don't know. I should have thought about my favorite. I don't actually know if I can pick. I mentioned everyone's favorite is Nexus Princess, but I don't actually think it was my favorite. And that's going to shock people, but like, honestly, Sikran was the funnest to heal. It was just a ton of damage. I think they're all good, though. I think I'm gonna like all of them. But yeah, that is, unfortunately or fortunately, the last boss, because we could not test the queen. So unless anyone has any other questions, that is where we will stop stream for today. And thank you for hanging out. I hope you all have the best of loot luck, and good luck with early access tomorrow. Woohoo!